People may not necessarily understand how to help them through their healing process. Not that they don't want to, but they don't have those skills. So being able to have environments that they can learn and grow in, that understands, what they've been through, and that's able to be a healthy support, I think would be amazing. And right now, we don't have very many spaces and places for young people.
Hello and welcome to our second video series. My name is Deja Merpoe. I am one of the GAB leads as well as the Training and Capacity Building Manager here at Youth Collaboratory, and I want to thank you for joining us. For those of you who have not already, please visit our website at www.youthcollaboratory.org and click out the link to check out our first video series. In part 2 of this video series, we will examine the intersection between Black girls and the juvenile justice system. We will focus on Black girls who have been victimized of sex trafficking, or at risk of becoming victims of sex trafficking, and the impact that the juvenile justice system has on these Black girls. But before we get started, let's look at some statistics. Rights for Girls conducted research that showed that according to the FBI, African American children comprise 59% of all prostitution arrests for those under the age of 18. That's more than any other racial group. In a 2-year review, all suspected human trafficking incidents where 40% of victims of sex trafficking were African Americans in the Los Angeles County. 92% of girls in the juvenile justice system identified as trafficking victims were African Americans, and 62% of those children were from child welfare system, and 84% were from poor communities in the southeastern part of LA County. The National Center of Victims of Crime reports that Black youth ages 12 to 19 are victims of violent crime at significant higher rates than their white peers. Black youth are 3 times more likely to be victims of reported child abuse or neglect, 3 times more likely to be victims of robbery, and 5 times more likely to be victims of homicide. Per the FBI, 59% of all juvenile prostitution arrests involve African Americans, with law enforcement more likely to see a Black sex trafficking victim as a prostitute and not as someone who is needing help. When trying to find solutions towards keeping our Black girls safe, it really requires a radical examination of our core beliefs American society is currently based on.
So hello, Fancy. It is so good to finally come and to have this interview with you. I'm just going to start off with some brief introductions. My name is Deja Merpoe. My pronouns are she, her. I am a training and capacity building manager here at Youth Collaboratory, and I focus a lot in our preventing and addressing sexual exploitation of youth. I also am one of the leads for our Girls Action Board team. So it is so nice to finally meet you and to have this conversation. And yeah, we can just introduce yourself.
I was gonna say it's very, very nice to meet you too. Deja, right? Deja Mir, right? I'm very happy to actually have an opportunity to spend this time with you. We've been in a couple of trainings together. I've enjoyed all of the work that you guys have done. I thoroughly have enjoyed the work that you've done. I appreciate what y'all are doing as well with Youth Collaboratory. So thank you for reaching out to me and inviting me to be a part of this conversation. So again, my name is Fancy Sears, and I'm a licensed mental health professional with Emotion Therapy LLC in Birmingham, Alabama. We work with individuals, children, and families who experience toxic stress. Our goal is to help them to be able to rediscover a new sense of normalcy through the use of cognitive behavioral, family systems, trauma, and relaxation therapeutic techniques. And so that's pretty much kind of what we do and how we ended up getting connected with Children Aid Society, as far as being able to help provide that service with the juvenile court system here, um, for Black girls who have experienced trafficking. And so we're, just part of that family that's designed to try to help them um, heal through the traumas that they've experienced.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I didn't from my understanding, I didn't know that this was actually a partnership with Children's Aid. So that's even more like amazing for just to even hear that, and just to hear how you guys connected and try to use your services to better for Black girls. So that's amazing just to hear something like that. So can you speak a little bit, like I know you just talked about how you and Children's Aid, like you guys have a partnership, and can you talk a little bit about how you leverage that partnership in the work that you do?
Yes. So how we partner together and work together, Children's Aid Society is our hub. And so what they've done an amazing job is identifying providers in the community who are able to assist in this specific type of work. And so what happens is when there are young girls who have been identified in our juvenile justice system and our court system who have been identified as experiencing trafficking of some sort, then we are able to come together as a team to collaborate and identify what are the resources that we can put in place to assist this young person and assist them and their family, hopefully, in being able to recover, to be able to heal, to be able to rehabilitate and grow. And so I'm one of the therapeutic providers that they put in place a lot of times to help assist with that process. And it simply just goes through a referral process once we've identified what their needs are. And then we have case management. There's, people who provide case management, wraparound services, as far as mental health, not only do we do the individual counseling or family counseling, but we also do a lot of crisis intervention as well. There's a lot of crisis intervention that we do as well. And so we work together as a team to help them and fill in the gaps in those areas of need for them.
Yes, that's amazing how you two came together and were able to do that within your own local community. Do you kind of want to explain? I know you kind of gave like a brief introduction of yourself and like some of the things that you do. Do you have anything additional that you want to say about your organization and some of the services that you offer?
Sure. So part of the reason that we were able to connect with Children Aid Society was because of the specific services that we do provide in regards to helping individuals work through traumas. We do use trauma-informed cognitive behavioral therapeutic techniques, which is a certified therapeutic technique that's used to help individuals and family work through uh, um, trauma that they've experienced, whether it is historical trauma, intergenerational trauma, complex trauma, to be able to work through those various things. And so some of the things that we use, again, we talked about the cognitive behavioral therapy, family systems, and relaxation techniques. But what we use with relaxation techniques, we do a lot of mindfulness when we're working with people and helping them to develop the skills to be able to work through the triggers that they experience and be able to navigate that healing process. We help individuals to be able to develop the skills with mindfulness. We use breath work, trauma informed yoga, and grounding techniques. to help individuals to be able to increase their self-awareness, so that they're able to maintain focus on the here and now. Because a lot of times when we're experiencing any kind of mental health issue, or PTSD specifically, or depression or anxiety, we're not in the present moment. We're somewhere else, and so our goal is to be able to help them to increase that self-awareness so that they can maintain that focus on the here and now. We really want to help them regain a sense of self-control, so that they can challenge distorted thought patterns. Because because when you go through certain experiences, it really affects our ability to trust our decision making. And so we want to help them to be able to be empowered in that area. We also try to help them to encourage them to create a sense of safety and community, um, because that's something that's been hard to do. And so we really work with them in those areas and being able to identify who's our tribe, so to speak, and who are the safe people, and how can I tell, and be more confident in my decision making and connecting with others, and then being able to help them decrease stress that they experience, those stress responses that they experience through the use of these regulation skills. And so those are some of the things that we specifically do in the services that we offer, to our individuals that we serve and to their families and groups as well.
And Fancy is so, like, when as you were explaining your answering the question, you actually answered my next question that I had to you, like, what are some of your programs, ways that you engage, and like how with youth who have been impacted, with Black girls that have been impacted by C-sex and system involvement. And now, can you speak a little bit more to like some of the challenges that you may have came across, like in this process of really learning, the folks you work with at your organization and some of those barriers?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of the barriers are rooted in the traumas, okay, and rooted in those, whether it's intergenerational or slash transgenerational trauma. So for here specifically in the state of Alabama, I think a lot of people who are into the work that we do are familiar with ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. And so one of those ACEs is poverty. And so in the state of Alabama, poverty is the number one ACE. And so all of the side effects that come along with poverty. So the barriers, whether it is transportation, whether it is having the schedule to be able to connect to a therapist, whether it is being able to connect with resources that can help provide the services, whether it is through grant funding or insurance, being able to connect with the services in the right way. A lot of the systemic behavior patterns that are normalized, that are dysfunctional, that people don't know that are dysfunctional because it's been happening generationally over and over again. And so those things, being able to be patient when we are trying to help create new systems or create new behavior patterns or help them learn different ways of functioning. It takes a lot of patience, because it's different, and it's not necessarily something people are open to. It's easy for people to be offended, and get defensive because they feel that um, maybe you're saying something about them and their parenting style. And so really being able to overcome that barrier with the families to help them to understand that no, we're not saying anything about your parenting style. We're not judging you. We're not condemning you. We're here to support you. We understand that, this has been hard for you too. And how can we support you in this healing, that your family is doing together as a whole? Just general, the group think that comes with it in communities. A lot of times communities think that they are protecting each other, and really they're creating barriers for change. And so just helping them with that group think. And then over the past, couple years, just the barriers that we've experienced in general with COVID-19. And so that's created a lot of barriers, and being able to think outside the box and how can we connect families and connect with our young people, to make sure that we're keeping them engaged with services.
Yeah, that's great. And I like how you speak a lot about community, right? And just engage. Like, I love how that is a big thing that we talk about too within this work. So I like that you center that in your own organization. Can you speak a little bit about some of those? We talked about like some challenges. Can you speak more about some of the successes that you've seen within your organization?
Yeah, definitely. I've seen just the growth and the support from providers and again, community stakeholders, our key stakeholders. Um, Seeing that buy-in, and having that support is huge, because without their support, it's even harder to get this work done. Being able to see the buy-in with the family systems as well, even though it's work and it's hard a lot of times, if we stick with it, we'll see that buy-in eventually. But it does take time, and being able to be patient. But when you see that buy-in, like they're bought in, and you're able to work with them. And, I love the fact that there are families that they'll stay with you for the long haul. And then seeing our young people buy into, it takes a lot for them to trust again. And so to me, when you're able to gain their trust, and keep their trust, I think that's probably one of the best successes that we can have, because once we're able to do that, I think at that point, they're willing to try recommendations and try different things, to be able to help facilitate change, and healing in their life.
Get into some like general questions now, like more of organizational questions. Can you kind of like elaborate and explain to us like how the adultification and sexualization of Black girls contribute to Black girls' involvement within like juvenile justice system and some of the trends that you've seen in your own organization?
Yes. One of the main ones that I see is, because of the adultification and sexualization of Black girls, there is a lack of empathy and understanding and compassion, in regards to rehabilitation at times. The consequences that they receive for behaviors, um, seem to be harsher, because it is seen that, even though they're juveniles, they're looked at like adults, that you knew what you were doing. Um, this was a choice, um, and you chose this because you're a bad person. And that's how they internalize it, that there is no grace. And so I think that that is probably one of the most damaging things, because what it does is it reinforces to our Black girls um, that the abuse that they've endured, um, that it's their fault. Instead of helping them to understand that a lot of the behaviors um, that they have are really behaviors that they've learned, their survival skills. And so, really being able to shift our thought process from, this is a criminal or juvenile behavior, or a young person that's engaging in criminal or juvenile behavior, versus a young person that's engaging in survival skills. I think that helps us to be able to identify, okay, how can we support this young person in their rehabilitation and healing at the same time, so that we can reduce the recidivism, instead of them keep cycling back through the system. And that's the goal. We really want to help reduce the recidivism. And if we're able to look at the behaviors from a perspective of this is a survival skill that they've learned, then we can say, okay, what things can we put in place to help them to be able to make better decisions? Are they still going to mess up? Yes, because it still takes time to change from to trust that this is not, I don't have to perform in this way, or I don't have to necessarily make this decision to survive. It still takes time. But if we keep these programs, if we keep these providers, if we keep these resources in place, then hopefully they can at some point adjust and be able to change some of those behaviors because now they have the support to help them to do that. So.
Nancy, I think you're reading my brain. Like every time, like I'm like thinking of a question, you answer my next question. So it's so perfect. Like you're just answering all the questions, and I love it. And I really love your explanations and how in depth they are. You addressed this definitely when you just answered the question around like, you know, really in order to address, right, the over criminalization of Black girls, especially who have been exploited, like what are some of those improvements that can be made locally? Do you see any need or do you know of any other like ways to increase improvement on a more governmental level? Or do you notice like what are some gaps within the community?
Address it from what I see locally first, because that's what I see more. If some of the gaps that I see that would be helpful to fill would be able to have more transitional housing for Black girls who have experienced trafficking, so that we can provide them with safe and stable, number one, a safe and stable home, because in order to be able to heal and grow and change, we first have to be in a safe environment. Okay. And oftentimes, unfortunately, not all the time, but oftentimes, even in the family system, it's may not necessarily be the healthiest for them. It may still be in the communities where, you know, they experienced a lot of the abuse, and it just may not be the best environment for them. People may not necessarily understand how to help them through their healing process. Not that they don't want to, but they don't have those skills. So being able to have environments that they can learn and grow in, that understands, you know, what they've been through, and that's able to be a healthy support, I think would be amazing. And right now we don't have very many spaces and places for young people who may need housing. And I think that would be a wonderful place to start. Just continuing with, you know, therapeutic programming that's designed specifically for Black girls who have been trafficked and have been in that system, because it takes something different. Understanding that, you know, we do need, we need the ratio of providers to client needs to be larger, you know, and so because they need a lot of support. So it may look like there's 4 providers for one young lady who's going through a therapeutic program, but because of the crisis that she's in, it may take those 4 providers together to be able to help her get to a place of stability. And so being able to understand the ratios, being able to understand what kind of specific therapeutic training that they need, but just more therapeutic programming that's designed specifically for them, as well as just being able to have more people within the juvenile justice system who understand their specific systemic and legal needs and how to be able to help them navigate through that. Because of course, a lot of times they accrue, you know, different charges that may come up when they're trying to apply for different things. And it may seem like it's a barrier and it may feel like, okay, I can't get past this. And so we need people who can help them in those areas. What do we need to do and how can we fight for them and how can we advocate for them, so that this is not a barrier for them being able to grow in whatever areas that they're really passionate about and they want to grow. So I think those are some of the local things, just seeing us grow. And I know that, our community is definitely, that's been things that they've been talking about. And so as that those opportunities come open, whether it's within our state, but even more so if those kind of opportunities are being open federally, which can flow down to our state and to, some of our local communities, then that would be a huge support because then we can be able to better support them in different ways.
Going on to the next round, just digging into some policy, can you or think of or provide some policy recommendations that promote practical, actionable, and accessible tools to address the criminalization of Black girls who have been exploited?
Well, definitely what I would love to see is that there are more policies and protections that are put in place regarding mental health for our young Black girls who have experienced trafficking. And when I say policies and protections, that these things are considered first before we make decisions about any kind of consequence or rehabilitation or sentencing or charges that are made, that those things are put in place, that they have mental health providers who can come in and assess and to see what has happened, what are they experiencing, so that that can be taken into consideration when they're looking at, okay, how do we want to move forward with this young person who has, who's now here in our court system because of some behaviors that they've engaged in, due to, the things that they've experienced with, being human, trafficked. I would definitely love to see those kind of protections in place, protections in place for people who, you know, who do defend themselves, for young girls who do defend themselves, so that they are not, that it is seen in self-defense if they do defend themselves, and that it's not a negative consequence for them. And so I would say if there's anything, I would love to see those two things, those two protections in place, that there is more mental health that is being used to assess where they are, what's going on, how can we help them, and then protections in place for defense.
What would you share with people who are coming to organizations and seeking to work alongside youth who have been impacted by trafficking, especially Black girls? And what would you want them to know, especially if they were just getting started?
I would say that it's okay not to have all the answers specifically. And if I'm speaking specifically about myself as a mental health professional, we want to be able to help people, right? And so really being able to be okay with not having all the answers when we're working with young people and families who have been trafficked. It's a very complex situation. And so it can change even from, case to case, person to person, family to family. And so what may have worked with one particular family, like nothing about that method that you use may work with another family. And so just being okay with that. I think that, being able to connect with other providers is really helpful being able to um, connect with the network of individuals who are working in this same area so that you can have your support, your guidance, your mentorship, and know that you don't have to figure it out all by yourself. Which is honestly, I'm gonna be honest with you, that's one of the things that, we're thankful for with Children Aid Society because they have been doing this for such a long time. And with Youth Collaboratory, this when we were able to connect and through Children's Aid, this has been really a wonderful experience in helping us to grow. And so, really knowing that there's people out here who can help you, and it's okay to ask those questions, to be patient with the girls that you're working with. Change does not happen overnight. It's not going to happen in a year completely. It's going to take real time. So really being patient with your clients, being patient with your families, being patient with yourself. And then most importantly, above all, really, really, really take care of yourself. Really get your self-care practice down because this is heavy work. And in order to be able to show up in the spaces and places that we need to be our best healthy selves for the people that we're serving, we have to take care of ourselves and we have to know what we need and what that looks like. So really, really figure that out for yourself. And don't play with it. Take care of yourself, and know that it's okay and know that we need you to take care of yourself so that when you show up, you can be able to take care of other people.
Last question that I have for you. So if you could expand your organization to serve girls around the globe, what would you say to them? Like, especially Black girls that have been impacted? Like, what was that big advice that you would give to them?
Give me a second. Because this one, I'm not gonna lie, it stumped me because there's so many things I want to say.
Yeah.
There's so many.
Like, what is that? Because like, especially like with this video series, we try to like get like our young people to watch it and, like our young advocates. And we always try to get like some encouraging, input from folks that have been doing the work to give to the youth.
Well, one of the themes that I've seen with the young girls that I work with is this sense of feeling broken, and that something is wrong with me. And if there's anything that I could give to the young girls all over the world who've experienced this, is knowing that you were born whole. You are a whole human being and you have value, and that we need you, and that there you have even more to contribute now than you can imagine. And so I would love to say to be patient with yourself. Don't give up on yourself. No, it won't be easy, but we are here, and tap into your resources and know that we will do everything we can to help you to um, achieve your goals, to heal, um, and connect with others so that you can live a full life, and hopefully your best life yet.
Yeah, that's some amazing advice. So I really thank you for that. You got me over here tearing up, and you weren't even speaking directly to me.
Next, we will hear from some brief tips of engagement from Judge Stacey Bari-Erie. Now, this clip was taken from a Youth Collab learning session that we conducted around intersection of juvenile justice, understanding and implementing collaborative and culturally responsive services or practices for programs serving youth survivors of sex trafficking. Now, Judge Bari-Erie really touched on some important tips around engagement with Black girls who have system involvement with the juvenile justice system, so please take a look at this clip.
One of the things that we really, again, wanted to highlight and lift up is that the trauma can impact all aspects of behavior, decision-making, communication, and focus. Really understanding that the behavioral responses in a courtroom oftentimes weren't a function of what was going on in the courtroom, but what had this child had experienced that, again, brought them in and what they were navigating throughout their lives within the community. Wanted to acknowledge that minimization of behaviors or experiences, memory loss, lack of ability to focus, particularly if you're hearing from schools, those were types of symptoms that were manifesting from their trauma, and really trying to understand from the outset of the case how important it was to have a sense of what this youth had experienced. For us, the system, our procedures started with utilizing the West Coast Children's Clinic See It tool to understand the trauma that they had experienced and how we were going to need to factor that in to our services and supports. We know from adolescent brain development that just in general, adolescents are less able to control their impulses or resist triggers. And when you layer the experience of exploitation on that, it's far more difficult for them at times to engage in a way that adults think they should be engaging. So again, really trying to ground our understanding of the court process through their eyes, through their lens, and what it is that they needed to know. I also want to make sure that I'm lifting up and highlighting for our dedicated calendar, all of our youth had experienced exploitation or were at high risk of exploitation. However, the exploitation was never the focus of our proceedings. It was only if the youth chose to and wanted to discuss or reference that exploitation that it was ever brought up. So for us, it was really important to understand, not that we were quote unquote ignoring the obvious, but that wasn't the center of how we were engaging with that youth. So I also want to make sure that we understand that that was something that we all knew was present. It wasn't something that was the centerpiece of how we were going to observe and support that youth. From a judicial perspective, again, what's wrong with you to what has happened to you. I think too often adults and sometimes my brethren have this focus like, what's wrong with you? Why are you doing this? Without really, again, taking a literal pause and understanding what has happened to you, what has brought you here. I think it's really important for judicial officers to be upfront and to be real. These youth have experienced all sorts of things and they read us pretty well. They know when someone's being genuine. They know when someone's not. And it's important from our perspective, again, to be impeccable with your words, to be consistent and transparent, to speak with them in a language that they understand, not patronizing, not speaking down to them, but using and mirroring language where we can and when it is appropriate. For each hearing, for the first time a youth came before me, I explained to them, hey, I have this file of materials. We're going to get to all this legal stuff later. But I want to know from you, youth, how you see yourself. So I would ask every youth to give me 3 adjectives that they chose in terms of how they see themselves. And it was something that I would reference throughout the life of the case to try and reinforce sort of that positive reinforcement of things that they were able to see in themselves, but sometimes either the system and or the charges didn't reflect. Also think it was really important to explain to my youth that this was their hearing and they get the last word. We handle our business, the attorneys make the arguments that they need to make, the court makes its orders. And before we close out every hearing, I would turn to the youth and they got to share whatever it is they wanted to share. Either they had questions or they wanted to share something positive that had nothing to do with the court proceeding, or they were mad and wanted to discuss something, either the attorney or maybe even an order I made, but really trying to give the youth an opportunity to own the present and have their own agency through this very confusing court system. We found was very important to give them that voice in a way that was appropriate. Again, be impeccable with your words, expect testing, understand that when we're talking about the tip of the iceberg, we're never going to know everything that has happened. We know we're never going to know their full story and probably never will. And in some cases, we don't need to. but again, acknowledging that there is a story and that they get to tell it in their terms on their own time. Celebrating small successes. Sometimes it is, hey, judge, I went to school 2 days this week. Okay. So again, the normal thing would be, why aren't you in school 5 days a week? There may be lots of reasons why they're not in school, but giving them that space and looking for those opportunities to celebrate small successes. Again, a function of positive reinforcement. These youth are navigating so much. And as we know from the stages of change, they're going to go through different phases in terms of how they understand what's happening to them. And something that might be very small to us is really important to them. So really looking for and seeking out those small successes to celebrate, we think is really appropriate. Measurements. So what is success? I would also say that whether you have a dedicated calendar or not, success is an individualized issue. A success for one child may be to be weaned off of heroin. For another child, it may be the ability to go to school and stay in school. For another child who might be in placement, it means that they are feeling safe and connected, and either they aren't leaving or they're leaving for shorter periods of time. So when we're looking for those successes, we really want to look at, is it stability in placement? Are there longer periods between the time of absconding? Are they engaged in TFCBT? One of the things that we think is really appropriate is understanding that therapy piece, understanding the trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. In our courtroom, our clinicians are present during the proceedings for a couple of different reasons. First is to give that youth the sense and physical sense of quote unquote safety with someone that they know is just there for them. But we would also have those spaces in between a calendar where we're waiting for the next youth to come in, where in real time, our dedicated clinicians can say, hey, judge, or hey, DA, or hey, county counsel, this is what I'm seeing. Or I can ask them, how did you think that went? Is there something that you would share with the court to do differently or to repeat? So really understanding that the support that youth have can also be support that, if we're humble enough to ask, can give to those system partners in a way to improve experiences and to do a better job. For some youth, age-appropriate success can be reunification with family when it's safe to do so. And again, meeting educational and or employment goals depending on that youth. Judges can. So I'm a very big advocate of the opportunity that judicial officers have to be leaders. Young people who are experiencing trafficking are navigating complex multidimensional systems which require multi-system engagement. And as I said at the outset, we don't do this alone. I can make all of the orders in the world that I want to, but unless the youth has connections in their own space and community to succeed, then it's just a function of me making orders. So again, really want to encourage judicial officers to get off of the bench and into the community, understanding that we can convene a lot of meetings, but it's also important, and I think a measure of genuine humility, go meet them where they're at. We hold meetings, I hold a ton of meetings with educators, and I go to the school. If I want to go and meet with community supporters who have a drop-in center, I'm going to go to the drop-in center. Sure, they can come to the courthouse and there's all of that structure and impact, but I also think it's a good measure of partnership for the judges to literally get off of the bench, go to our community where the community is. Reaching out to your communities, again, to learn about what's available. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We also don't have to think that we know it all. So yes, as you said in the chat, courthouses can be intimidating. So getting your community together in a way that we're going to the community, I think is important. You want to establish accountability measures. Again, not losing sight that these are juvenile justice proceedings. So we do have a youth who has allegedly committed a crime. And for that, there are normal things that a court is obligated to do in terms of accountability. But accountability is different for every child. Every youth is an individual with individual experiences and are deserving of individually tailored orders. So your accountability measures aren't a one size fit all. And particularly for youth who have experienced exploitation, you need to know that that's also important to consider. I'm going to speed it up real quick because I know I only have about 3 minutes left. Not all treatment is equal. Again, you want to ensure you're not just making a one size fits all set of orders across the board, no matter what the offense is. Want to make sure that you are tailoring the experience. Again, as noted, we'll have a therapist present in the courtroom for the youth to feel safe. And I want to just pause here for a second. A couple of times you've seen me put air quotes around safe. What I think is safe is determined by the fact that I'm a 51-year-old woman who has a professional degree and a stable job. What the youth think is safe is different. So I also ask the youth for them to define for us how they view safety and how or why they feel safe in different spaces. And whether we agree or not, it's giving us insight into how that youth is determining for themselves what safety is. We know that there are clearly circumstances that are physically not safe for them, but if we have that understanding from them in their own words, then we're able to shape and shift how we serve and support that youth to meet them where they're at and where they would like to go for themselves. And again, it gives us an opportunity to empower them through their own choices. Judges can educate youth as much as they can, as we should, about the process. It's intimidating, it's confusing, but unfortunately for some youth, it's also something that can be fairly familiar, particularly if you are in a child welfare or dependency context. Your judge could be the most consistent person in your life. And I'll leave the commentary, but needing to understand that we are explaining to them what's going on and how we are reaching decisions and giving them a voice where it is appropriate to do so, I think makes the process less confusing. Special attention needs to be placed on caregivers, whether that's mom, dad, grandma, auntie, non-related extended family member. They too are probably experiencing lots of confusion and fear on behalf of the child that they are providing care for. So looking for opportunities within the community to tailor services and support for the caregiver also helps to provide greater stability for the youth. I know that can be hard in some jurisdictions, but I think it's a really important piece. We don't want to forget the moms, the dads, the caregivers, the aunties who are providing the support.
We have heard from some amazing speakers in this video series and cannot wait to bring you to part 3 of our video series, in which we take a deeper look at some more promising practices. For additional information on any of the speakers that you heard from today, please visit our website at www.youthcollaboratory.org and click on the link. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch the video series, and join us back for part 3 of our 3-part video series, Take Action Against Trafficking of Black Girls.
A national leadership team made up of a diverse representation of female-identified Black girls ages 18 to 24. We are committed to creating pathways for Black girls to lead in the work that centers their healing, resilience, and professional development. We focus on Black girls who are disproportionately represented in trafficking and create a space for their voices to be uplifted and moved to the forefront of the field by providing training and technical assistance to the organizations that serve them. Our team is dedicated to capacity building, authentic youth collaboration, and building community. We utilize our passion, power, and pursuit of change to support the prevention and early intervention efforts of trafficking of Black girls.
So who are we here at Youth Collaboratory?
Well, Youth Collaboratory serves organizations and professionals working to improve the lives of young people, their families, and the communities. We harness the power of youth services community to innovate, evaluate, and drive effective strategies that assure the safety and well-being of youth and young adults, and unlocking their limitless potential. Our focuses are on coordinated community responses to youth and young adult homelessness, preventing and addressing relationship violence, sexual exploitation, and trafficking of youth, and supporting opportunities for young people to build community with family, peers, and others to enhance their assets, explore their strengths, and develop lasting connections. To learn more about our work, please visit our website at www.youthcollaboratory.org.